but if you can't put your name behind it, shut up. Like, if you can't put your name behind talking about somebody else's name, then you probably shouldn't be saying what you're saying. Welcome back to the Richard Sherman podcast. We're in the offseason, and it's time for free agency. Mitchell, I know you're excited about your Detroit Lions, but there's a lot of action out there. How you feeling?
Well, there is a lot of action. This is some of my favorite time of the year, Rich. I mean, we got the NFL Combine that just wrapped up. NFL free agency starts here next week. Let's start out in San Francisco, though, because we're seeing it right now. These teams are trying to position themselves, getting ready for free agency. And unfortunately, we're seeing some big-name players on the move, starting with Deebo Samuel out of San Francisco, going to the Washington Commanders. The Commanders give Jayden Daniels some extra help. They got a surplus of cap space with the luxury ahead and Jayden on the rookie deal. Richard, what are your thoughts on this? Let's start at it from Washington's perspective, a team that's dealing in a position of power with so much money to spend. How much do you like this move, acquiring Deebo Samuel?
I love it. It's a great move for them. It's their first move of the offseason. They have a ton of cap space. We're always talking about their $100 million of cap space that they have. Adam Peters was under John Lynch in San Francisco. So, those conversations were probably free-flowing. But I think it's great for both sides. You could see Deebo wrote a cool message about San Francisco, how much he loves Kyle and John and how they gave him an opportunity. There's no bad blood there. I think this is something both sides needed. Just a fresh start. It's human nature. Sometimes you need a fresh start. You need to try something new, go somewhere else and figure it out. And I think San Francisco obviously needed a little bit of cap relief, and they'll get some of that. And Deebo needed a new start in a fresh place, and I think he'll be great for that young receiving core with Scary Terry, how versatile he can be. I think he'll help them in the run game, in the pass game, and be explosive. And I think he's excited about that opportunity. Maybe this is the spark he needed at this time in his career. And I think I'm really happy for him and for them and how it played out, because I think this is about as clean as it could get in the NFL. Hey, both sides, it could get dirty and ugly sometimes where everybody's saying names and saying bad things about each other. But this wasn't like that. The 49ers, he expressed he wanted to go somewhere else. 49ers said, okay, we appreciate everything you've done for us. We'll do our best to get you to a competitive team. And that's what they did. I think both sides are happy, and it's going to work out.
You got to love it from Deebo's perspective. I mean, to be able to partner up with Jayden Daniels, this is like the perfect compliment to him. You got Scary Terry McLaurin on one side, and then you get Deebo Samuel inserted in that offense. I mean, what are your thoughts on how this changes them in terms of the landscape of the NFC? Does this help push them further to that top bracket of the NFC with true NFC contenders going into next year?
Well, I think it definitely puts them in a conversation. Obviously they're in a division with the Philadelphia Eagles, who just came off a Super Bowl win against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, they still have to get in a conversation where you got to win your division. That's a tough division to win. The Dallas Cowboys had a bad year, but they'll be back. I think this puts them in a conversation, but we have to see how it all plays out on the field. I think they're going to make a lot of other moves and spend a lot of that money in free agency, maybe getting some O-line help, some pass rushers, maybe another corner or two. And I think that'll help them move further into that conversation. I think retaining their own guys, see if they bring back Bobby Wagner, if that's a move they make, or if they push Luvu into the Mike linebacker spot and then draft another one. I'm not sure, but I think as they continue to make moves, this definitely makes them a more attractive destination.
Yeah, you got to love it as a Washington Commander fan. Let's talk about the Niners, though. I mean, I think a lot of fans would be a little surprised only getting a fifth-round pick in return from Deebo. Does that surprise you at all? Did you expect more than a fifth?
Well, it just depended. It depended on the situation. If the San Francisco 49ers were going to have to pay Deebo's bonus and pay his salary for the year, then of course they would get more draft compensation. But I think once you count the fact that Washington's going to take on the bonus and take on the salary, that's the reason why the draft compensation was less. And I think that's why San Francisco was okay with it, rather than waiting for after the draft and trying to do a June 1st kind of deal. I think this was a situation where they got something for him and they put him in a place he wanted to be. And he was able to keep the salary that he's making.
Well, you look at the 49ers, the roster now, specifically that wide receiver room. Obviously, they invested a first-round pick in Ricky Pearsall last year, and Brandon Ayuk went out early in that season, but it was the emergence of Juwan Jennings, Mr. Third Down, third and Juwan. Juwan Jennings, do you see him stepping up and filling this Deebo role?
Well, I saw him stepping up last year, filling every role. And so I expect that to continue. I think they value him. I think they saw the value in him, and in a lot of games, he was dominant. He was unguardable at times. And then I think George Kittle. I think it goes back to sometimes you have too many mouths to feed, um, and you don't have enough footballs. There's only one football, and you're trying to feed Christian McCaffrey, Kittle, Ayuk. You're trying to get it to Debo, and now you got this draft pick in Persall, and you're trying to make sure you keep everybody happy, and it's very difficult to do. And I think this kind of simplifies things. I think it gets Kittle more involved in the offense, and I think at times they had to rely on him, and he obviously has been fantastic and one of the best tight ends in the game. And I think down the stretch, Kyle Shanahan realized that, hey, we're not using George Kittle enough. We need to find a way to get him the ball, and you cannot get everybody the ball when you have so many mouths to feed. Once Brandon comes back, once Christian comes back, then what happens to Juwan Jennings? Is he just a third down guy again now? And I don't think he wants to fall back into that role. So, I think this is sometimes addition by subtraction, just, kind of simplifying. Hey, I don't have to get the ball to all these guys anymore. I can just run the offense more straightforward.
Let's move on and talk about the defending champs. The Philadelphia Eagles caught headlines here with some notable cuts. A friend of the program, I know one of your good friends, Darius Big Play Slay, is cut along with James Bradbury. A lot of this could be just, cap restructuring. Maybe they bring these guys back, maybe not. What are your reaction to these moves from the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, when they took corners in the first and second round last year, you could see what direction they wanted to go. Quinyon Mitchell looked like a perennial All-Pro, perennial Pro Bowl type player. Cooper DeJean looked great in the inside and the nickel safety, rover kind of role that he played in Vic's defense. I think that's what they're thinking. And I think they would love to have Slay back in a lesser, on a lesser salary. And I don't know what the logistics of the salary were, where they couldn't just restructure them and continue. But I think that just pushes the cap hit out later. And maybe they just want to do something now and lower it now, and it made more financial sense to cut him and then re-sign him for a lower number than to just restructure him and push some of the salary out. I don't know what they're going to do with James Bradbury, but maybe they want him back too. But again, they've drafted really well at that position. They have depth, and they feel comfortable with that depth. I expect Slay. He's a guy that Philadelphia has loved, the fans love, the team loves. He played well in the playoffs. He played well in the big games, and I think he's done a great job mentoring those young guys and helping them develop in the way he has.
Where do you see as a good fit for Slay if it's not Philly, if Philly does ultimately move on from him? I know there's been rumblings about sending him back here to Detroit, and Lord knows the Detroit fan base would love to have Slay. But where do you think is the best fit for Slay moving forward?
I could see that happening. I could see him going back to Detroit. I mean, any contending team, I think he'll have his pick, and I don't think he's going to a developing team, a team that's trying to figure it out. I think he's going to go to a team that is ready to win now. I'm not sure if Buffalo's an option. Obviously they have really talented young corners, but a good veteran always helps a room like that come together. Kansas City could be an option, as always, as it is for everyone. Detroit is a really competitive team, and somewhere like Green Bay would make sense for me.
Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. They always seem to be a mystery in the offseason, at least of late. And now the big name to be paid is Micah Parsons. But today, there's breaking news that they paid somebody else. Osa Odighizuwa, the defensive tackle, gets a 4-year, $80 million deal with $58 million guaranteed. How disrespectful is this, do you think, to pay Osa first before Micah Parsons? Because this seems like a sizable number to be thrown out when you got to also pay Micah Parsons.
I said this last year, and I'm saying again this offseason. It doesn't seem like they want to pay Micah Parsons. It doesn't. He's put on tape, really good tape. He's been really impactful, one of the best defensive players in the National Football League, and that's undeniable. and still they haven't paid him. The number only continues to go up as the cap goes up. The cap's at what, 277 now or 279, which means his number's only going up. It was what it supposed to get 33, 34 million, which means his is going to be 36, 37 million dollars now. And you just gave $20 million to his running mate before him. I just, I don't know. I mean, Stephen Jones said they're going to be strategic about how they pay this season, and it doesn't make sense how you're doing it. Maybe they don't value him. Maybe they're going to move on for Micah Parsons. But I mean, even then, I think we would see some movement before the draft, and the draft is coming up here fast in a hurry. And so I haven't heard any rumblings, unless they're keeping it all under wraps, like the Luka Doncic trade, of Micah Parsons being moved for any substantial draft considerations. And that's what it would take. It'd take a top 10 pick, I would imagine, to get Micah Parsons from the Dallas Cowboys. But I don't see why the Dallas Cowboys do it outside of you not wanting to pay him, or something everybody else doesn't know. But I also don't understand why you haven't paid him yet. Like, it's not like his production has fallen off a cliff at any point in time. He's been really productive. He's played hard. He's played well. He hasn't been incredibly injury prone throughout his career. So this move is just head scratching, because you have one of the best players in the league. He's right here. You could pay him, and instead you're paying everybody else. You paid Dak Prescott top money. You paid CeeDee Lamb top money. You paid Odighizuwa. I mean, top money for what he's put on. He had 4.5 sacks last year. And so I don't know. I don't know what this move says. I don't know what Micah Parsons feels about it. But if I was him, I'd be calling my agent like, hey, tell him the price went up.
I don't understand what's in the water down there in Dallas. I mean, this management of both the Mavericks and the Dallas Cowboys, it's very perplexing, to say the least. We got to talk about a guy I know you have a lot of respect for, and his name's going to be high on the list of potential number one pick, and that's Travis Hunter. I mean, this guy is a Swiss Army knife. Arguably one of the best defensive backs in the college football landscape, as well as the best wide receivers. I know we've talked about it in the past, but like, where do you see Travis Hunter being the best fit at this next step? Is it DB? Does he play a little bit of wide out? Does he split between the two? Like, if you were drafting Travis Hunter, what role would you put him in?
we've gone down this road. We've gone down this road, for better or for worse. Yeah, I'd play him at corner. I'd let him spotlight at receiver. But I think, the greatest effect he could have is at corner. But, as he said multiple times, he wants to do full-time both. And if a team gives him an opportunity, I'd love to see it. You know what I mean? It hasn't been done on a full-time basis in the National Football League that I can remember in recent memory. And it would be something that'd be really incredible to see. It'd make him a true unicorn. He's once-in-a-lifetime kind of player that we've never seen before. We've seen guys do it in college, but not to the extent that he did it in college. So let's not put anything past it. Now, him saying what he's doing is harder than what Ohtani's doing, that's all debatable. That's all subject to how hard you think baseball is versus how hard you think football is. I've never played baseball on a professional level or even collegiate level, so I'm not even going to speculate on how hard it is. I get frustrated with fans talking about, man, this guy should have been able to catch that and you do this. And it's like, you've never been in that situation. I have. It's very much much harder than it looks. But if I just looked at it somewhat objectively, just the physical strain that I think it appears to have to do what Ohtani's doing versus what Travis Hunter's doing, I think it's more physically demanding, what Travis Hunter is trying to do, and what he wants to do in the NFL, just because, I mean, it literally takes a physical toll. I'm sure you can measure the amount of miles he would be running or the amount of yards he would be running per game, the miles per hour, the energy he exerts each and every play. I mean, I'm sure you can measure these things. And if you did it by that, what Travis is doing is going to be considered more difficult. If you talk about just skill and the skill it takes to execute the task that's being asked of you, I think that's where Sohi's talent is really, really magnified, because it's such a unique skill set that he has that few people on earth can do. But the same is true with Travis, being able to transfer his mind from offensive to defensive playbooks, to understand the situations, to understand what this receiver is giving you versus what this corner is giving you, to just flip a switch on and off is incredibly difficult in football. That's why most people only play one side of the football for majority of their career, because once you flip to the other side, a lot of people can't execute at such a high level. They aren't the same kind of player. It's too much thinking. Maybe you're a free player on the offensive side, but on defense, you're like, kind of in your head about certain things, and you're panicked, or you're indecisive. And Travis does that seamlessly, and that should be celebrated and really appreciated, because it's an incredible skill that he has. I don't know who he reminds me of, because there's nobody really built like him or trying to do what he's done. So, I mean, the guys that have done it, Champ Bailey, Dion, Charles Woodson, have played both sides of the ball and then gone to the league. Chris Gamble, Hester, those are all the ones I can think of off the top of my head. I played some offense in college, and then I played defense in college, but I never played them both at the same time outside of a spring game, and I dominated in that game. But I can't say he reminds me of anybody. He's a unique player. He's a unique talent.
Well, I think you mentioned one guy, and it's Charles Woodson. But I mean, even his usage at Michigan wasn't to the same magnitude as Travis Hunter's at Colorado. And you got to give Travis Hunter a ton of credit for what he's been able to achieve playing college football. It's truly marvelous. And if he's able to do that same thing in the NFL, he's going to be a one of one. But let's talk about him as a DB, because that's your specialty, Rich. Like, what do you view as his biggest strengths as a draft prospect if you're trying to break down his game?
Well, he has incredible instincts, just football instincts, that things that you can't be taught. His feel and zone coverage is really, really incredible. His ball skills apparently are really, top of the line, top notch on both sides of football. He high points it like nobody else. His fearlessness, and again, his just brain, his intelligence, his football IQ, to be able to flip a switch and go offensive mindset and attack and run his routes and know coverages and know where to sit in the zones and know where help defenders are coming from. And then to flip it on to defense and say, all right, man, I'm in cover 2, cover 3, I'm in man to man, and I'm trying not to get picked. I got to communicate with this guy. We got in and out calls. We got different calls in a bunch. Who has 2? Who has 3? Who has this? Hey, where's the robber in this call? There's so many moving parts to it. What's my run responsibility on this play? And he does that so seamlessly that people don't even know that it's difficult. And he's done that. And so that's really been impressive to me. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are, with all new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From monster slams to dishing a rock to cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. First time? Here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the promo code Richard. That's code Richard for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Let's talk a little bit about the Cincinnati Bengals. We've talked about them in years past and podcasts of old, and you mentioned it a couple off seasons ago. This Cincinnati Bengals team, to put simply, is cheap. They don't like to pay their players, and I know they're up against it. I know they had to pay Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow wants to keep the band together with Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins, but they're faced in this financial situation where it's almost like they got to pay one or the other, and it's pretty obvious that Tee Higgins isn't top of their priority list. They're franchise tagging Tee Higgins for the second year in a row. He's going to get a tag of $26.2 million. Like, what do you think is the end game with this Tee Higgins situation? Do you think he's a Cincinnati Bengal next year, or do you think they're going to try to move on from him? Because I don't see how you can possibly pay both these guys the amount of money that I'm sure that they want.
Well, there's a way you can do it. We can't say there's no way you can do it when we see the Philadelphia Eagles playing all day, always open A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith was making 25, which is a little less than a franchise tag Tee Higgins just got. And A.J. Brown was making top receiver money. And now, of course, Ja'Marr Chase wants more than Justin Jefferson's 35.1 or whatever it is. He wants 100,000 over whatever Jefferson man, he wanted that last year. So the price only goes up. So I wouldn't be surprised if he asked him for 37 this year. And again, this is the price of waiting, the price of not getting your guys sewn up early. You end up paying more because the cap only goes up. And I don't know if these owners are banking on these guys getting hurt or these guys not having a great season. But if Mike Brown was banking on Ja'Marr Chase not having a great season, this was the absolute worst bet in the history of the National Football League. Not only did he have a great season, he had one of the best seasons. He had the Triple Crown season, and now you have to pay him post Triple Crown. Like, you could have just paid him straight up. Now you got to pay him post Triple Crown, and so he can name his price. And now you've given him even more leverage by putting a franchise tag on Tee Higgins and not him, because now he knows he's not going to get tagged. And so he can challenge every bit of this and push you to the limit. And I think that's going to be the hard part now, is because I don't think they ever anticipated paying top receiver money to either one of them. And they're going to have to really pay it to Tee Higgins in a big way. I would 5 years, 180, something around there, Mitchell. That's probably where he's going to be close to. 5 years, 180, if not more. And they're going to have to pay it, or you're going to have to watch him walk. And that would be one of the craziest things in the history. If Ja'Marr Chase ever hit free agency, that would be one of the crazy. That would be up there with Luka Doncic getting traded to the Lakers, even though I love that move more than anything.
I know you do. Well, I mean, we saw something similar happen in San Francisco, right? They went out and paid Deebo, and then they got the situation that they were in last offseason with Brandon Ayuk, and ultimately had to pay him too. And now we see how that situation shakes out a year later. I just don't know if there's a way to please both parties here. We'll see how the Bengals handle this situation, because certainly they were one of the hottest teams towards the end of last season. It was too little too late, ultimately for the hole they dug themselves in early in the season. But this team with Joe Burrow in his prime, if you get those two receivers paired up and happy with him, the sky's the limit for this franchise. So hopefully they get this squared away soon. Let's go back to the Colorado Buffs. We got to talk a little bit about Shedeur Sanders. He was at the combine, didn't really work out, but was there. And we saw, some of the feedback coming in from these anonymous QB coaches saying that Shedeur Sanders was arrogant and brash. Shedeur responded, how do you know? I mean, what do you make of this? Does it matter if he's arrogant and brash? It seems like proof's in the pudding with him. He helped turn Colorado around and Jackson State around. What's your thoughts on this Shedeur Sanders situation?
It matters. It matters. But it matters because you're talking about personality traits. You're talking about a guy who's going to lead a franchise. But it's not bad. It's not always bad. It's not. I'm sure there are people that think Joe Burrow comes off that way. There are probably people that have met Patrick Mahomes that maybe think he comes off that way. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say Lamar Jackson, because he's a super humble, like down-to-earth guy. But there are quarterbacks in this league that come off that way. I mean, how have they talked about Aaron Rodgers for the past decade or two? Like, if he can play the game, it doesn't matter. But if you can't put your name behind it, shut up. Like, if you can't put your name behind talking about somebody else's name, then you probably shouldn't be saying what you're saying. Like, I can sit here and put my name, face, and reputation on what I say, because it is what it is. If you agree, you would agree. If you don't, you don't. I believe what I'm saying is true. And if I'm proven wrong, I can accept, hey, I was wrong about that, but I thought that at the time. And thank goodness somebody was able to show me better or show me wiser. But I don't appreciate guys trying to slander guys and trying to paint guys in a negative light to try to affect their livelihood. Like, I'm not about that. You coming off arrogant and brash, what does it benefit you to say that? And that would be my question. Like, what benefit do you receive by saying this? Do you feel like, oh man, yeah, let me get this out there for everybody so that, they can know this kid is who he truly is? Like, why aren't you telling me how any other quarterback interviewed? Why am I not hearing what Jackson Dart's personality is? Why am I not hearing what Cam Ward's personality is in the room. Why are they so energized to talk negatively about Shedeur is my question, and not even talk anyway about the other guys. Like I don't hear anybody. There's other top quarterbacks being picked in this draft, and I don't hear anybody talking about, oh man, this guy's this or this guy coming off bland or not the smartest. Like it seems like they want to tear down who they want to tear down. They want to build up who they want to build up. But if you're gonna tear a kid down, stand on it. Like, hey, I'm the quarterbacks coach for the LA Las Vegas Raiders, and I think Shedeur Sanders is a little arrogant. I think he's a little, but you can't because you know what you're saying is going to be controversial. It's going to be talked about everywhere. Not everybody's going to agree. Not everybody's going to disagree. And so when you do that and you don't put your name on it, you're like, hey, I'm out of it. I'm just throwing a spark into the fire. I'm just throwing nonsense out there. I don't want to be attached to it. I don't want you guys to come for me. Like, no, bro, no. If he's arrogant and brash, say it. Say it with all of your chest and put your name behind it, and then I could believe it. Then I'll trust it.
Well, let's talk about the NFL Combine a little bit more. This is the time of the season where everyone's together. There's a lot of smoke screens going on, and maybe that take is a smoke screen. Maybe someone wants Shedeur Sanders to fall to them. Who do you like most as a fit for Shedeur? Is it the Giants? Yeah, do you like the Raiders? Where do you see him having the most early success and being the best fit?
If I was him, I would want to go to the Jets. I want to go to the Jets. I think they have the weapons in place. They have a good running back in Breece Hall. They have Garrett Wilson. It looks like they're trying to get rid of Davante. But I think they'll draft another receiver. But I think that's a place with a good running game. You know, if you fix that offensive line some, they have talented pieces on the defense. It's not the craziest division in the world to come into and potentially upset some teams and find a way to sneak into the playoffs. I think the Jets would be a great fit for him to have early success. If he's not ready, you know, you lean on that run game, Breece Hall and the rest of them, and you try to build him as he gets better, as he feels more comfortable out there. You give him a little bit more, but I think that would be the best fit for him.
At this combine, and Richard, you know it all too well, you guys are under the microscope. But if you're a GM or a scout, how much weight are you really putting on the combine, these measurables, how fast these guys are running, how much weight they're putting up on the bench press? You know, between the combine and pro days, we've seen a ton of people elevate their draft stock or lose their draft stock. But if you were a GM, how much emphasis truly would you be looking at these combine results?
I'd say if it's out of 100% and we're saying certain percentages tape, certain percentages is background information and personality and, you know, any red flags on that side, I'd say combine's probably 15%. I'd give it no more than that because like how many guys have elevated their crazy stock at the combine? Like the fastest guys in the history of our game, there's not a lot of all pros between them. You know what I mean? On the all pro, on the list of fastest guys in combine history, there's not a ton of all pros and pro bowlers between them. You know, I think Chris Johnson got a couple. You know, Xavier Worthy looks like a solid character. Tariq Woolen got a Pro Bowl in his rookie year, but it's very few times that you find these guys are gonna, you know what I mean, like all the combine measurables and all the RAS scores are gonna lead to great football player. There are guys, if you go through some of the greatest players, if you went to the Hall of Fame list and then went to their RAS scores or their combine numbers, it's probably not going to be the most impressive numbers you'd have. You know, they talk about the greatest receiver of all time and Jerry Rice running a 4.6. Like, you're not going to find him the crazy combine now. Now Randy Moss's numbers are a little freakish. You know, I think T.O.'s numbers are pretty great. But everybody's numbers aren't going to measure that great. And so you have to look at the tape and see the football player and how they maneuver in situations, how they maneuver when things are going bad, when things are going good, how they practice. There's a lot more that goes into it. So this has got to be if I'm a head coach, this is a small part of it.
You look at some of the stories, right? I mean, let's rewind a couple drafts ago. The Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson draft. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, from a production standpoint at a U of M, was probably the best football player in that draft, but Trayvon Walker went first because of measurables. Aiden Hutchinson has shorter arms, and we've seen how that has played off. Aiden Hutchinson, barring that injury, was certainly the Defensive Player of the Year candidate last year, and we see it now again. I mean, I don't know the guy's game at all, but Shamar Stewart is elevated a ton. He's a riser. He had one of the best combines out of any defensive end edge rusher in this draft. But then you look at his production at Texas A&M, and you see 2 sacks a season. It makes you wonder how much these guys are thinking. Also, you see Will Campbell from LSU, the #1 offensive tackle candidate. They're saying his arms are in the 6th percentile of length, and now he's being encouraged to move to interior offensive line. Like, it's just wild. It's wild to me to think that an offensive lineman who's had so much success at LSU and has only done things the way he knows how to do it, the way his body allows to do it, is being told he can't play offensive tackle because of his arm length now. Any thought on that, Rich?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's almost like they're, when they say a long corner couldn't play in the league when I was coming up. Let him play it and see. You know what I mean? It's the reason he's had so much success, and I think they use these measurables and these boxes to put people where they're like, hey, majority of the guys who are this size and hand size and arm length and wingspan have had success, and the guys who haven't have these issues. But each human being is different, and that's how you got to treat it. You got to treat everybody different. Now you can use comps and all that, but like, I hate the combine for a number of reasons, and I would never do it again. But I hate it more because they try to BS on my stuff all the time. Like, I ran a 4.51 and a 4.54, and now you look on the website and they put 4.6. I'm like, when did I ever run a 4.6? God, like, literally in every bit of my combine, I ran 4.51 and 4.54. Now, to tell the story, I guess they're like, Richard Sherman ran a 4.6. I said, damn, like. I mean, I'm okay. I was 4.51 and 4.54 if you want to give me my slow time, but you don't got to make stuff up. I think the combine is a sham, and it's just something to fill the offseason.
Well, another add a little more fuel to your fire, Rich. I mean, when you were coming out, your size, 6'3", 200 pounds, or whatever you were weighing back then, was viewed as a negative trait for you, right? It didn't fit the position as defensive back. But I want to read something to you for one of the combine risers, Darian Porter out of Iowa State, 6'3", 195 pounds with 33 and an eighth inch arms. Quote unquote, he already boasts ideal size for the position. How times have changed, my friend.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I remember hearing them say, because every year they do the whole like 40 yard dash comparison, and these guys are so much faster than Richard Sherman. Like, oh, they're going to be better than him. Like, I'm going to let you know something. I've played a lot of football in my time, 11 years worth, and I've ran against 4.3s, 4.2s. I don't think any of those guys ever gave me issues. I caught a lot of interceptions on them. I gave a few touchdowns to them. And there's so much more to the game than that. That speed is almost like, if it hits a certain threshold, if you can run 4.5, you're fine. You're fine. Running 4.4 doesn't make you better than a guy running 4.5. Running 4.3 really doesn't make you that much better, because it almost makes you more dependent on it. And so you look at a guy who runs 4.3 and you're like, okay, what does his technique look like? And you're like, his technique isn't that sound because he's fast and he always knows he can catch up. The guy that runs 4.5's technique is really sound because he knows he can't. He knows he has to win early. He knows he has to put himself in position, because if he makes a mistake, it's over with. The play's done. The guy who runs 4.3 knows he has more margin for error, so he works less on those things. If a guy runs 4.3 and his technique is great, then you got Patrick Surtain, a guy who's going to be a perennial All-Pro until he's done playing this game, or until his technique falters. But I mean, he's been a technician since the day he came in. But I just feel like we've gotten to a time where they're reaching, and these kids are able to give them what they want to see. Like, they're able to put the facade up some of these scouts and GMs have been taught to see, but they aren't built with the strength and integrity and the dedication and the drive and the dog that you got to have to win consistently in this league. And some of them are. Like, that's why some of these SEC kids and these kids from LSU and Georgia and Bama are having so much success in this league because they are still held to that standard of being a dog. And you see some of these guys who haven't played hard-nosed football and haven't been challenged are struggling in this league because you can't transfer out, you can't move, you can't switch teams when things get hard. You got to weather the storm, and they don't know how.
That's the new mindset. We're going to see how that all plays out here. Let's talk about the LA Rams. This offseason was filled with conversation about Matthew Stafford. Ultimately, the Rams gave him the green light to go check out what his market value was with other teams, and we saw there were some interested suitors. The Giants were one of them. There was some reports that the Raiders and Tom Brady were courting him as well. You know, how surprised are you with the way the Rams handled this offseason with Matthew Stafford?
I'm not surprised really at all because they've done what he wanted them to do every other year. You know, every year is like, hey, pay me more. And they've changed and gave more. Pay me more. They folded and gave him more. And this year they were like, hey, go see if somebody else will give you more because we're tired and you've done great by us. And if you feel like that's us doing great by you, then go have at it. And I think sometimes you got to do that. You know, I mean, he did give them a chance, and they were a play or two away from making the NFC title game and putting the Eagles out last year. That is a big deal. But you were also banged up. You're older. You're always on the edge of retirement. But so that doesn't surprise me that much. It's good that he made the decision because I think they said the Giants had the compensation the Rams wanted, and they had the money that Stafford wanted. And I think he understood that, hey, I have a better chance here with Sean McVay and these receivers and Puka Nacua and the system that I know, and not moving my family all the way to New York and starting over again and trying to figure it out. So I'm going to stay here. And so I think that was great for both sides. I think both sides played that as reasonably and as amicably as you could possibly do in that situation.
Well, while we're talking about QBs, let's talk about Sam Darnold. It doesn't look like Minnesota is going to be franchise tagging him. They're going to open themselves up for a mystery this offseason at the quarterback position. Is it J.J. McCarthy's time? Do they look to add another veteran on top of him? We shall see. But in terms of Sam Darnold, where do you think is the best landing spot for him? He showed out a lot this year. He showed that he can play this game at a high level, worthy of that top pick that he was years ago. But where do you think is the best fit for him now?
Whoever is on the outside looking in on these top quarterbacks. So right now, I'd say that's the Raiders. That's potentially the Jets. Yeah, those
Wouldn't
teams.
that be lovely?
Right. Oh my God. You talk about full circle moment. Circle of life. That'd be crazy. I think those teams have to be in on him. I think Tennessee and those teams that are going to draft Shedeur and Cam Ward and potentially Jackson Dart, I'm hearing now, those guys are going to have to, if they want a veteran, then you'd have to pay him premium in draft. I don't think they'll do that. I think that's the situation Atlanta fell into last year, and obviously now they're stuck. But I don't see very many places that would pay him over $30 million in draft a quarterback. So it depends on what his number is. Maybe he comes back to Minnesota at a reasonable price and they make it a quarterback competition. And I think that's the best of both worlds for that team. But outside of that, I think there are a few opportunities where he could come in and be the starter guaranteed and get starter money like he feels he deserves. And that's unfortunate, but it's what it is right now.
Well, I'm with you, man. I'd love to see him end up back with the Jets, and I think, frankly, they should bring in a backup worthy to compete with them, and that backup could be Zach Wilson. You want to talk about full circle moment over there in New York? That's what I would do, So let's talk about the Steelers a little bit here, though. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson opened up.
Wait. I just heard what you said. I just heard what you said, Mitchell. Zach Wilson. I'm done.
That's what I'm doing, man. If you're gonna bring back, Sam Darnold, you might as well bring back Zach Wilson too, and let these guys fight it out.
The fans would burn the stadium down if they did that. They would burn the stadium down.
Oh, man, I would love to see it. The Jets, obviously with Aaron Glenn at the helm, they're going to be looking for a quarterback. And when we're talking about the Jets, let's talk a little bit about what they're dealing with, because Aaron Rodgers, it looks like he wants to play still, but they've already made it apparent that they're moving on from him. And it looks like they're also going to be moving on from Davante Adams potentially as well. Um, Here we go. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, if he does move on, obviously he's in the twilight of his career. Like, where is the best landing spot for him next? As him, you know he's going to want to compete, but I don't know after we saw what went on with New York. I know you got a ton of respect for this guy, Rich, but where is a realistic landing spot for Aaron Rodgers at this point of his career?
That's tough because it really would have been with the Rams. It would have been Stafford going out, them getting him for a discount, and being able to build around him. That would have been the best case scenario for him. Now, I don't know. It just depends on how much they believe in these young quarterbacks and where he would really play. Would he play for the New York Giants and can they get him? Obviously they were all in on the Stafford deal, and so were the Raiders. So that shows you that even with this draft coming up, those teams are really okay and content with going with a veteran guy, a high priced veteran guy. And so I don't know. I'd say Raiders are the Giants. If he could get those jobs, he'd take it, I'm sure.
Well, while we're on the podcast right now, just got news that Davante Adams has been released by the team. So now he enters free agency. Like, obviously, he's going to be a big name in free agency. Where do you think he lands? Is it back to the Packers? They truly need a bona fide number one up in Green Bay. Could you see something like that?
I could definitely see something like that, and that'd be like a cool reunion, for the right price. I'm sure he'd be into it. It'd be a good, just full circle moment for the franchise. Him potentially finishing his career there, and all that. But on the flip side, if he doesn't, and the Packers aren't, open to that, then I think he goes and goes wherever Aaron goes. If he goes to the Giants, I think that Davante tries to go to the Giants with Aaron, and they try to finish this rodeo out together.
That would be a wild one for sure. Staying in New York, just switching teams. Let's go to Pittsburgh, though. We already kind of touched on it previously. Last offseason was a big storyline. Justin Fields against Russell Wilson. The Steelers got a luxury in getting Russell Wilson in there at a minimum contract. But now they're looking at the same issue again this year. If you're the Steelers, who do you bring back? Is it Justin Fields? Is it Russell Wilson? Do you bring them both back and rerun the same roster you had last year? What's your thought process with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I think you do something you have never done, and you make a really crazy trade and try to get in the top five and get a quarterback. I'm not sure who that trade is. You only have a few pieces. You only have Pickens, Minka, TJ. Like, those are pretty much your biggest tradable pieces, because the options outside of that are pretty slim. Like, do you get Aaron? Do you trust Sam Darnold to come run the ship in Pittsburgh? Like, is that what we're going with? You got to deal with Baltimore multiple times. You got to deal with Cincinnati multiple times. I don't think Sam Darnold is the guy that would do well under those circumstances. But if you talk about in terms of financial compensation, Russ will be more expensive than Fields right now. Obviously, there's more experience. You saw what you can get with Russell. You saw what you can get with Justin Fields. Where do you see the upside? Who do you see with more upside? That's going to be the question, honestly. And I don't have the answer. I think they got to make a move to finally get a franchise quarterback in the draft and switch things up. If they don't do that, then it's pretty much you're still just spinning your wheels.
Yeah, you're right. They're in this hamster wheel dealing with, quarterback turnover after quarterback turnover ever since, Ben Roethlisberger retired, really. And they got to find that next guy for the next 5 to 10 years, not next 1 to 2 years. It's been marvelous to see this Pittsburgh Steelers organization stay competitive, be in the playoffs year after year. But at some point, as a fan base, just getting to the playoffs is not enough. And I know they want to win and be more competitive in the AFC. Let's stay in the division before we wrap. We got to revisit the Myles Garrett discussion. He's still the hot name. in the trade wins right now. There was news that the Lions were being extremely aggressive. We know Philly's freeing up money to try to make a run at them. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills have been in that conversation as well. You know, it looks like Cleveland tried to smooth things over with Myles and renegotiate his contract and extend him, but he has made it abundantly clear he wants to win now and play for a competitor. How do you see this situation shaking out with the Cleveland Browns and Myles Garrett?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird situation. If they don't get it done before the draft, I don't think it gets done. So I'd be really surprised if it goes past the draft and gets done, because at that point you're trading him for likely draft picks. You're not going to trade him for a comparable player. There is no comparable player unless you're, trading him for a TJ Watt or Bosa or, and no team would do that. So I don't know where they go from here. I think they try to trade him for a early first round pick. If any of those teams are interested in him, if you can get the Giants or somebody to take the bait, I think maybe if they would have got Matt Stafford, then they'd be more willing to play ball in that, realm. But I think that's the only way the Browns give him up. And otherwise, they keep him and franchise him.
Well, I'll tell you here, as a Detroiter, we would absolutely love to see him playing opposite Aiden Hutchinson. So fingers crossed that can happen. But Richard, this is our first episode in the off season. I know we're excited to bring you guys more content as the free agency progresses along and the NFL draft approaches. I will let you sign us off, my friend.
Well, I appreciate you guys joining us again for this off-season podcast, the first one we've done. We will do many more. We appreciate you joining us. I know you could be anywhere in the world enjoying your time, but you're here with us, and we greatly appreciate it. Have a beautiful, blessed day.